I'm your host, Jim Smith, and welcome to our show, Deerfield Days, a historical documentary capturing the recollections, anecdotes, tall tales, and short stories of some of Broward County and Deerfield Beach's earliest settlers. The city of Deerfield Beach will celebrate its Diamond Jubilee, 75th anniversary in the year 2000, an exciting time for all and the perfect opportunity to mark this moment in our history, to not only document the past, but record priceless memories for future generations, to foster an understanding of how far we've come, and to develop an appreciation for how far we may go as the city of Deerfield Beach continues to grow.
5 miles long with huge stretches fronting Florida's Gold Coast and reaching 2 miles wide, originally tearing deep into the Everglades territory, the area known as Deerfield Beach had been owned by kings, inhabited by Native Americans, surveyed by industrialists, sold by speculators, and settled by America's earliest pioneers. From a frontier farming community and a handful of hardy souls in the early 1900s, to a thriving community of nearly 60,000 in the year 2000, with a rich and culturally diverse population and broad economic business base, Deerfield Beach reaches into the past as it looks to the future in the historical documentary, Deerfield Days.
Before we start our dialogue with our guest, we should start at the beginning. I don't mean the beginning as in 1763 to 1783, when England dominated these American. British surveyor William de Braun dedicated his report on this area to the Earl of Hillsborough, who served King George as Secretary of State for the southern British colonies. The year was 1896, and Henry Flagler fought the forces of nature and forged southward with his railroad track. Like a spine, he ran a twin rail of steel through the pumped people, life, and money into a rugged territory, turning muck and wilderness into patches of civilization. A generation or so later, in the mid-20s, a neighboring city, then known as Boca Raton, was threatening the takeover of a nearby area known as Deerfield. Facing the loss of its identity, a resident named J.D. Butler led an initiative supported by other local residents, resulting in the incorporation of what would become the town of Deerfield Beach, so named after the many deer which populated the wild, rugged terrain, and officially recognized as such on June 11, 1925. As you can see, our set is an authentic style replica of the front porch of an early pioneer house. What do you think about this set, folks? Some of the people sitting on our panel and in our audience or their ancestors carved out plots from swamps and turned wild fig trees and overgrown tropical foliage of saw palmetto and cabbage palms into land capable of growing pineapple, corn, cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, and beans. Those were tough times. They were tough people, and we're going to hear some terrific stories.
In 1910, Deerfield Beach gained 2 new citizens from Texas who would have a lasting impact on the community. This true pioneer began in the grocery business and later joined his brother in the farming business. Together, they formed Butler Farms Incorporated in 1937.
We have with us a first-generation descendant of George Emery Butler. His son, Jack Butler, nephew of James D. Butler. Tell us about how your family came to Deerfield and their contributions to its early development.
Well, I was born in Deerfield in 1917. My aunt and uncle, J.D. Butler and Alice Butler, they came in 1910. The reason that they could like it here because of agriculture, and it was just a nice place to be. They got into agriculture, and then my parents came in 1915, and they got into farming, and they grew, and farming was the main source of income at Deerfield at the time, but everything was related to agriculture.
I wanted to ask Jack Butler if he remembers a story your mother told about the day she got off the train in Deerfield.
I believe she did say that she wondered what she had gotten into when she stopped in Deerfield, because Deerfield was so small, and this was populated with people and mosquitoes. And they were one of the first people in the town that knew of who had screens on their windows. When they sat on the porch like we're doing here now, of course we were not sitting out there with our Sunday going to meeting clothes on. And they had a smudge pot of what they call bee brand. Some of you don't know what bee brand is, insecticide. You could set it on, it would smother or smolder, and the smoke would drive the mosquitoes away. So that's what we did, because there was nothing else to do. During the day, you could go to the beach, but at night, with no electricity and no running water, it was tough.
Any other panelists? Leona?
We can be very proud to be a part of Deerfield. I do remember when I was away in college, and I said I was from Deerfield. Everyone looked at me like I was some wild person. Where is that? Deerfield? Must be a lot of deer there. What do you mean by Deerfield? We were not on the map. And don't ask me what year it was, because I'm not telling my age. But that was some time ago, and now we are on every map. We are well known. Everywhere we go now, people are talking about Deerfield. So Deerfield has grown to such a beautiful and such a lovely place, a place that we can be so proud of. And I'm so happy that I happen to be a part of Deerfield. I said that when I went to the Historical Society. I think Mary knew, but most of the other people didn't know that I was born here, and they were saying how long they had been there. This one said 50 years and the other one 35. And I said, excuse me, I was born in Deerfield. So I'm so proud to know that Deerfield has grown from a little small thing to the great, big, beautiful city it is today.
On June 22, 1898, a grant was requested, resulting in the only post office between Delray Beach and Fort Lauderdale, serving a population of 20 settlers, which opened in Deerfield Beach. Around 1910, Deerfield's population reportedly stood at between 200 and 300 people. The area neighboring present-day Hillsborough Boulevard and Dixie Highway, then a 9-foot-wide dirt road flanked by a handful of stores and 2 hotels, became a nucleus of activity as a consequence of the Florida East Coast Railway.
I wanted to talk about the days of railroad travel. We did have the Florida East Coast Railway. It was situated right alongside our family business, Deerfield Builder Supply. And in the early days, when I was 3 or 4 years old, I would come from Fort Lauderdale, where we lived then, with my father into Deerfield to the, what was a block plant, and then we later sold building supplies. And at that time, there was a monopoly by Ed Ball on the railroads, and he was told that he would have to provide passenger service from Miami to Jacksonville. And he set it up so that there was 1 train a day north, 1 train a day south. And my father and I would flag down the train in Fort Lauderdale. They didn't make regular stops. He'd just get out his handkerchief and wave him down. We get on the train early in the morning and ride to Deerfield, get off right there by the lumberyard, Hillsborough Avenue, and spend the day. And then when it was time to go home late in the evening, he'd get out his handkerchief, flag the train down, and go again. And we were always the only passengers on the train, and we never paid either.
That is a great story. Nobody would have ever thought about flagging down a train and having it stop to begin with, and then get on and ride.
Okay, about train 29 and train 30. 29 would go north. No, south. 30 would come south. It took you the longest time to get from here to Port Salerno. I boarded the train one morning going to spend Easter weekend with my aunt in Port Salerno. Boarded the train 9 o'clock. Guess what time we got there? To Port Salerno.
4:30.
3:30. From Deerfield to Port Salerno, it took 29, that many hours to get us to Port Salerno.
Barney?
I would just add, since my dad was a station master in Fort Lauderdale and up and down the line in Boca Raton, and for 43 years he was with the railroad, so I relate well to your story.
The Hillsborough River formed the northern boundary of Deerfield. A narrow wooden bridge crossed the river west of the Florida East Coast Railroad, leading the traveler onto a path to another fledgling settlement, Boca Raton. In 1913, a momentous event occurred. The Hillsborough Canal was completed, turning a swampy creek into a major waterway connecting with Lake Okeechobee, located some 45 miles to the northwest. An enthusiastic celebration was held by the townspeople on December 14, 1913, recognizing the canal completion and this great occasion.
We have another comment from the audience.
J.B. Wiles always commented, he took me one day up to the north side of the Hillsborough Canal there where the railroad bridge is. Jack can probably relate to this. There was a stagecoach stop. And when the water was high in the fall of the year, those periods, they couldn't cross the ford, they called it, much as they had in Europe. I guess they filled it in with rock till it was about 2 feet deep, where they could drive across it with wagons, he said. But when the water was high, the reason they had a camp there, they would have to stay there maybe sometimes for a week, the people traveling on the stagecoach. So that's about the earliest transportation we know of in this area.
I came through in 1917 and I was looking for a job. I was riding my bike, you know, and Miss Thomas, J.D. Butler's sister, was running a hotel. You see, across the river over on the Boca side, there was an old stagecoach, staging area where people came. Some folks said, well, it wasn't a stagecoach road, but it was a place where you stopped and the man watered your horses and fed them, and you spent the night over here in the hotel on this side of the river. They had a bridge on the other side.
There was a pile of dirt out there that they had dredged out of the Intracoastal. This was before Penthouse time. Penthouse North was built. And it was a pile of dirt out there, that good rich dirt. There was an old couple, Aunt Jetty and Uncle Ned, and they grew some of the largest sweet potatoes you have ever seen in your life up on that hill. Now, we used to go out there and help them dig them up, and my dad and my brothers, and then they would give us a basket full of them. This used to be a grove, grapefruit and oranges. During our recess time, which was a whole hour, we would come through here from the school. We roamed through the bushes and under the trees and over the hills and whatever, picking grapefruits and oranges. And then we get back to school before recess was over. It used to be what was known as Butler's Quarters, right here on the other side of 95. That's where a lot of the migrating people would come to live when they came to work on the farm.
The key to the community's economy in those first early days lay in the facilities of the produce shed adjacent to the FEC depot. The farmers brought their vegetables and fruits here for shipment north. Deerfield, along with Hallandale, Dania, Fort Lauderdale, and Pompano at the time of Broward County's creation, were dotted with packing houses and became major shipping points on the East Coast. From 300 to 1,000 crates of vegetables were transported daily from those locations by express during the height of the season. Laborers received $1.50 per day for such tasks as preparing the land and picking the crops. They were paid 5 cents for each crate of vegetables.
During the farming season, these colored school children were required or needed by their families to help make money to support the family during the summer. So they did not have school during the heavy part of the bean picking season, so they had to have money to survive during the summer because there was just no other money around. There was no government help, no nothing. So eventually that situation was reversed so that the black children or the colored children went to school the same schedule as the white children, but it was just an unfortunate situation. But the families needed the input. When those families went to the farm to work, those children worked. Their mothers and fathers were right there with them, and they made enough money to survive during the summer. And there was just, like I say, there was no money available during the summer because there was no other industry here at this time. When Boca Raton Club started up, some people started working up there, but the agriculture was just the sole economy here for so long, actually up until about the time World War II started.